and welcome to stage 3 of the Digital Swiss 5. We are getting ready from the race from Fiesch, to Nufenen Pass. Nufenen Pass being one of, in fact, the highest mountain pass in Switzerland. I'm your host for today, Kira McVitie, and I'm joined with Jacob Hennessy, pro cyclist for Canyon DHB. So Jake actually raced the first 2 stages of the Digital Swiss 5. I'm just wondering, Jake, how are you feeling for today?
I'm feeling sore now. It is quite uncomfortable sitting, just putting out this much power. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Another day. So today, like you said, a massive mountain, a lot more similar to stage 1 than yesterday's stage. Yesterday was a good fast sort of course, but today's going to be one of those days that's just a slog where you're constantly turning a huge gear.
We actually got Jake set up for Rouvy earlier today, and we've got a short video of that now.
I'm Jacob Hennessy. I'm a pro cyclist for Canyon DHB, and I'm going to be taking part in the Tour de Suisse fan race on Rouvy. All you have to do is download the app, open it up on your device, and then just click register and you'll be ready to race. So we now have the turbo trainer on. Just calibrated my own power meter and also calibrated the turbo. With races, especially e-racing, you're not really going to want to eat during the race because it's going to be a full-out effort. They're never really more than an hour. So it's a good idea to try and get some food in maybe 3 hours before. And then once you're warmed up and you're ready to go, it's just a case of grip tight and hang on and enjoy. So, yeah.
Okay, so welcome back. We currently have around 10-15 minutes till we head off on the start of this stage. We're currently waiting on the start line in Fiesch. We've got about 20 kilometers or so of pretty much flat until we get to the notorious Nufenen Pass. Around 20 kilometers, it'll start picking up to around 10%, and the riders will really feel it up to the finish line at the top of some lovely snow-peaked mountains there. Today's stage is 33.54 kilometers long with around 1,500 meters of altitude gained over that short amount of distance. So it is definitely going to be a lumpy one today, maybe not one that suits Jake as well. Jake, of course, won stage 2 yesterday, but it's fair to say that you're not a climber. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a fair comment. I think it's fair. I think the first stage was super hard, and that was about 1,100 meters, 1,200 meters climbing. So kind of have a little bit more of an understanding now of what virtual climbing meters mean. And I know that 1,500 doesn't sound like a good number. So it's going to be a real tough last 13.5K after the sort of 20K mark, like you say, 10%, and then it just doesn't really back off at all. There's a few little bits to catch your breath, but it's pretty consistent. And I think the pros were doing it all in around 1 hour 10. Well, I think the lead time was 1 hour 12 minutes from Nicholas Roach.
Mm-hmm.
But sort of, you're looking at your Roglic's and your Yates were still finishing at 1 hour 20. So could be a long turbo, basically, this one.
Yes, definitely. And it's a case of pacing it well until you hit the climb. We saw earlier in the pro race, Nicholas Roach taking the victory there in 1 hour and 12 minutes. That's a long time for, the best in the world. Ilnaz Zakarin in second and Larry Warbas in third in the pro race earlier today, but they were over a minute down on Nicholas Roach. So it's going to be a tough stage today. There's no doubt about it, particularly if you've joined in on the fan race the previous couple of days. What's great about the Digital Swiss 5 is you have the opportunity to race the same race as the pros. There we've just got the podium view of the top 3 there in the pro race. So you have the unique opportunity to ride the same route that the pros get to ride earlier in the day, which I think is really a great way to enjoy cycling, particularly at the minute when a lot of us are stuck at home and the indoor trainer being one of the best ways to keep that fitness up during these times. Do you have any indoor training tips, Jake, for the viewers out there?
Yeah, so my top tip would be a big fan. My top tip would be trying to keep yourself as cool as possible. You are going to overheat because you're sitting in your own heat, especially with these studio lights. But you're definitely going to overheat. So it's a good idea to get the best fan you can sort of get, or the biggest fan you can get, possibly some fresh air with an open window or something along those lines. And also try and just stay as hydrated as possible, because the other day, the first day, for instance, when I got I massively overheated, if you were tuning in for that, I lost close to 4 kilograms, which would be 4 litres of water. So that shows that how much it's possible to overheat, but hopefully I won't be anywhere near that today. And yesterday was okay. I sort of got it just about spot on. I wasn't too dehydrated when I finished, but I was definitely a bit run down.
Yeah, it's a tough one out there. If you're wanting to join in with the fan race, as I mentioned earlier, you can head to race.rouvy.com to sign up, register. This is stage 3, but we have 2 more stages on Saturday and Sunday at 6 o'clock UK time. So do come back, and we would love to commentate on your suffering. So get involved. Okay, so I've actually got a few questions for you, Jake, around the sort of power that you're doing in these races. You know, what is your tactics when you're doing this sort of threshold power for that long?
Well, a lot of it is just, like you say, it's a threshold effort. It's a lot of them, the last 2 have been around the hour mark. So you know what you can do for an hour, and you know that it's going to be similar to a sort of time trial effort. So just going out with the intention that it is another 50 odd minutes of whatever you're starting at. So not going too hard at the start, letting the race come to you and just seeing where you sort of end up. And not overdoing it on any of the real steep little climbs or anything, just to try and keep a nice consistent power across the board and try and keep that normalized and averaged close as you can together.
Definitely. It is a tough one. Do you feel like you're riding at pretty much your maximum FTP the whole ride?
Yeah, yesterday was close as I can get really on a turbo. It was as hard as I very rarely do a 1 hour sit down pedal and power for a whole hour. So yeah, I would have thought that's probably the best thing to go off as an FTP really yesterday.
So today's stage heads through the Nufenen Pass, which is, of course, the highest mountain pass in the whole of Switzerland, highest road pass, in Switzerland. It's a really scenic view up there, not that you will be able to appreciate that. This would actually be at altitude, but obviously we're not experiencing that on the turbo. Do you think that actually it might be easier riding this route on Rouvy than in real life?
Yeah, I don't know. There's things that you don't really notice about roads, maybe on sitting in the comfort of your own home. But for instance, this climb I know is around 2,400, 2,500 meters elevation at the top, which if you were doing it on the roads, you'd definitely feel, and your power would start to drop off. But then you've also got that increased fatigue of the fact that it is at that elevation, and it will be cold at the top. Like I've done a few climbs in my time. I did a Stelvio Pass, and at the bottom was 25 degrees, and at the top was closer to 0, and there was snow all around. So, it's different in their own way, I think.
Definitely. I actually haven't been to this part of Switzerland before. Have you ever done much riding in Switzerland?
I have. I used to live, so a few years ago, I lived on Lago Maggiore, which is just on the Swiss border in Italy. And I lived there for a year with the Mitchelton team. And I was very lucky to get to ride. And I love Switzerland. It's one of my favourite countries, especially to ride, and the roads are amazing. So I don't think I've done this one. I have done a lot of big climbs in Switzerland, so they kind of all blend into one. So I kind of know what I'm in for, I think.
Yes, definitely.
I'm looking forward to it in a sort of anxious way, so we'll see.
As we saw earlier in the pro race, there were certain riders out in the front in the flat section. For example, Pierre Latour, who disappeared off the face of the earth the moment we hit the mountain. After having watched that pro race, do you have any sort of tactic or strategy going into this stage today?
Well, seeing how Roach rode the race, I think he sort of went out as he was probably one of the few riders that did a consistent power throughout. A lot of riders pegged it back and then maybe rode a little bit harder on the climb, which I definitely think and thought would be the way to go. But he seemed to just pull off the ability to ride at that 6 watts per kilo, which is basically what he did for the whole ride, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it was very impressive. We saw at the beginning the likes of Nicholas Roach, Ilmar Zakarin, Larry Warbass riding at 7 to 8 watts per kilo at points.
James Whelan
attacking from the gun, yes. Phenomenal riding, and like you say, they were holding a consistent 5.5 to 6 watts per kilo for the duration, bearing in mind this is well over an hour. So it's pretty tough stuff here, and just shows how well all these professional riders are managing to keep fit.
And how well they know their bodies. I mean, these guys are the experts at doing what they do, but it's just a case of pegging themselves against themselves and knowing, right, okay, I've got another 50 minutes, try not blow up in 20. And I think you can see that with the pros. They're just doing the same consistent power the whole way through.
Yes, definitely. Very, very impressive stuff. So we've got less than 3 minutes to go now till the start of stage 3. You're here with us. 2 minutes 45 to go. Today's stage is 33.54 kilometers long from Fiesch to Nufenen Pass. I hope I'm saying that right. I feel like my pronunciation of all towns and usernames might be a little bit interesting as we go along, but I will do my best. Luckily, Jake's username is J Hennessy, which is quite easy to do. But often we get people choose to name their avatars all sorts of wonderful things. So there's going to be some interesting pronunciation as we go along. Okay, now 2 minutes to go. Any speculation on who will be in the lead? How do you feel your chances fare today?
Again, I feel like it's something, because it's going to be more than an hour, so it's slightly different to the other ones. It's not just, okay, I'm going to go off and do my hour power. And having done that first stage and realised how hard the climb is and how sort of similar it is to a real life climb, it's like that cycling's like wrestling a bear. You don't stop when you're tired. It's one of those, I'm going to have to try and be a bit careful because I don't want to go too hard and then almost come to a stop on the climb, because although the climb is only 13k and the flat bit's 20k, the climb is going to take the majority of the time on this course.
Definitely. And, you know, a 13-kilometre climb, 13 kilometres sounds pretty easy, I'd say, on the flat. You know, it wouldn't take too long. But the moment you add that gradient in there and you add any sort of mountain pass, it is going to sting the legs and take considerably longer than it would obviously on the flat. Okay, so we have less than a minute to go now. Get ready for the start of the fan race. This is race 3 in the Digital Swiss 5 from Fiesch to Nufenen Pass. We're getting ready to go in 30 seconds. We've got a good lineup for you today. As well as watching the race, we are going to have insight from the likes of Roman Kreuziger, who did the pro race earlier today. And we're also going to hear from Ineos sports director Oliver Cookson later on. So Jake is going to stop with his talking now, as we have 10 seconds until we're off. Get into the right gear and get ready to pedal. It's going to be about an hour and a half effort, I reckon. Here we go.
The legs are already
okay, and we're off. It's always a mad dash at the start as everyone is hitting out with some serious power at the moment. 5, 6, 7 watts per kilo. I can see on the screen. It's hard to see who the leader is going to be at the moment as they all dash out of the beautiful mountain town of Fiesch. As we can see, the typical Swiss houses on the mountainside there, looking very nice as these riders sort themselves out in the first stretch of this stage. We've got about 20 kilometers of fairly flat rolling roads until we get to the bottom of the Nufenen Pass. As we can see, we're on board with M. Sutter at the minute, who's in 13th place, riding at over 4 watts per kilo at the moment. It's hard to say who the key protagonist will be at this point because everyone is at their limit, pushing on as they try to establish themselves in this race number 3 of the Digital Swiss 5. So let's have a look at who's leading at the moment. We've got a few names I'm recognising from yesterday and stage 1 of the Digital Swiss 5. Okay, so we are now on board with G. Desprez, putting out 5 watts per kilo at the minute. Second place is J. Lloyd. Third, G. Basson at the moment. But as we've seen with these previous couple of stages, the first couple of kilometres can completely change in terms of who is up there and leading the way at this point. Just seen in 10th place, W. Machute, who was in our stage yesterday, making his way up into 8th position now. This is all to play for at this point, only a couple of 100 metres between the top 20 even at the moment. Really impressive stuff. Following G. Desprez, he's riding at almost 400 watts at the moment. Just to put that into context, your average sort of club rider, they can ride an hour power of around kind of 250 watts. So this is almost double that, just to give you a bit of perspective. 6.5 watts per kilo, really impressive stuff. So let's have a look now at Jake Hennessy, who is right next to me in the studio, giving it the beans, riding at 5 watts per kilo at the minute. He's in 20th position and holding strong. I think his tactic for this race is to keep a good pace up until the bottom of the climb and see what he has left, bearing in mind, of course, that Jake has done the previous 2 stages. This will be a case of pacing his effort and seeing what his legs can do after the previous day's efforts. So let's have a look at the top 10. All riders currently pressing on at over 5 watts per kilo. Really impressive stuff. It'll be really interesting to see how this race unfolds. I believe that really the top 10 could change dramatically as we go along this flat section. So let's have a look then. Guy Desprez is in first place, the French rider. Second place, Jean-Pierre Lloyd from Office Guru Racing. Third place, Gustave Basson, Pro Touch Continental. Fourth place, Kent Main, also from Pro Touch Continental. And Travis Barrett, rounding out the top 5 for Office Guru Racing under 23s. A lot of South Africans there in the top 5. Second, third, fourth, and fifth, all from South Africa. That's one of the amazing things about these virtual races, is that you have people from all over the world taking part in the Digital Swiss 5. We saw earlier in the pro race that there were 22 different countries represented there in the pro race earlier today. And I believe that, in all honesty, there could be even more than that in the fan race, as we have possibly over 300 riders, fans from all over the world, taking part in this race today. We are just on board now with Kay Main, who's putting out 5.7 watts per kilo at the moment, 370 watts. Really impressive stuff as we charge along the flat. It'd be interesting to get up on screen what kilometers an hour they're doing. 24 kilometers an hour, I've just seen. Really, really speeding along the flat here. And we'll see shortly as we come out of the trees that it starts to open up and we'll start to see the mountain coming towards us. So like I said earlier, we've got 33 kilometers of racing to do today. Fairly uneventful parkour for the first 20 kilometers, but then we hit the Nufenen Pass, which rises up to 10, 11, 12% in places after 20 kilometers. So they've got 13 kilometers of climbing at the end of the stage just to really pinch those legs. It's going to be a tough one today. There's no doubt about it. So let's have a look at the top 10. Some protagonists from earlier days racing. I see Verini Alfin, who I believe took the win on stage 1. We've got T. Hanlon, W. Machuch, who definitely raced in yesterday's stage. They're still going strong today, and obviously they enjoyed it so much that they thought, we'll come back again. What sort of power is Jake doing at the minute? So 380 to 400 watts consistently is what Jake's riding at currently. He's got the fan on setting number 2 of 3. So there's one more fan setting to go. So we'll know that when he hits fan setting number 3, that he is at his maximum effort. So let's talk a bit about the pro race earlier. At around 6 minutes in, we started to see some of the key protagonists coming to the forefront. We saw Pierre Latour in the lead. Second place was James Whelan, and we saw Nate Brown in third. At this point, they were all riding at 7.5 watts per kilo, would you believe? Pierre Latour started to gain a 100-meter advantage around 2 kilometers in. And at split 1, which comes at 8 kilometers in, Pierre Latour had 1 minute and 10 advantage over Nicholas Roach, James Whelan, and Larry Warbass. Michael Kwiatkowski was also up there. He was in 5th position at split 1. So let's have a look to our fan race. We have 3 kilometers done. So we've got about 5 kilometers to go until we hit that split 1. Okay, so I've just heard that we have Roman Kreuziger, professional cyclist, coming online very, very soon. He's currently racing for NTT Pro Cycling, and he actually won the Tour of Switzerland back in 2008. So he will recognise some of these roads that are featured in the Digital Swiss 5. He will be on very shortly, so stay tuned for that. I believe we've got an ad break now, but do stay tuned. We'll be back with the racing action right after that. Okay, so that was an ad from Wahoo, one of our partners. A lot of riders obviously are set up on the Wahoo kickers and Wahoo systems. They have a lot of cool indoor training gear. Jake actually is on the Wahoo kicker at the moment, putting out some serious power, around 370 watts. We're 10 minutes into the racing now with about 5 kilometers of racing covered. We've got about 3K until we hit split number 1, which will be really the first point where we can assess who the leading riders are going to be in this race. But remember, there still is that 13-kilometer climb at the end of this stage. So even though we'll be able to see who's leading the way at this split 1, there are a total of 9 splits in this race. So it will be really, I think, an interesting one, seeing if the riders who are leading on the flat can hold on up that climb. As we are racing in a virtual reality, there will be no actual altitude for the riders on their indoor trainers at home, but the Nufenen Pass actually rises up to 1,500 meters of altitude, which you would be feeling if you
2,500.
2,500.
2,500 meters. Highest road.
Oh, my notes say 1,500.
Nope, it says 2,427.
Okay. I stand corrected. 2,500 meters of elevation gain. Very impressive that Jake can still tell me the right answers whilst correct me. Okay, so we've got one more advert, but don't worry, we'll be back very shortly with some more action as the racing unfolds.
A bit tricky start because I was kicked out from the start. So then I rejoined some other training ride, and then we finally joined the race. But of course, the first guys, they were already like 2Ks away, so it took a while. And I got a bit in the lactate starting full gas because I wanted to rejoin some guys in the race. And yeah, it was a long fight actually. Didn't expect it so hard, but as a training ride or of course was race, but I think the data for the coaches there can be really important because it's no way to go in the training so deep alone. And today catching some guys, it was really great. And yeah, I think there are some small issues, but if we can improve them, then in the future it will be actually quite interesting.
Yes, definitely. So you obviously won the Tour of Switzerland back in 2008. How does the difficulty of this Rouvy race compare to what you did in the Tour of Switzerland?
I still remember last year Tour de Suisse when we started down in Urichen, and we did the Nufenen Pass and some other pass. So I think in the real life the climb, of course it's hard.
Yes.
In the virtual race it's even harder because. Of course, with the home trainer, and I can see your mate there that it's spinning quite.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not really so. It's not so smooth, and yeah, there are small things that need to be improved. But I'm super happy that, of course, it was without a number on the backs, but it was a race. So I was before the start. I was really excited and nervous because I didn't know what to expect. And I think it went actually, apart the start, it went actually great, and I'm super happy about it.
Awesome. So have you done much virtual racing before? Was this your first time?
Well, raceway, I didn't race much because on the Zwift we have some training rides because, of course, with the teammates, we cannot be together at the races. So we try to ride together at least twice in the week and having some conference calls on the Rainbow. And so it's nice to rejoin the group and be in the fight. Of course, I would love to be there in the race a bit more in the bunch because today it felt really like the TT because I joined some guys, but then I dropped them, then they passed me. So it was really a bit like single race, but I think I'm reserved for Saturday. So if someone is feeling better or something like that, I think I will be able to give other time.
Lovely. So did you have any sort of plan heading into the race? Any kind of tactics?
Of course we had. It was full of technology because, as you know, we are NTT team, so they love in the team the technology. So I had my iPad in the front with my data, and then the big screen on the TV with the people in the front of the race, and on the iPhone I had Director with Coach.
Oh wow!
Rainbow application. So they were saying me the gradients of the climb and how long are the sections. and plus my coach was here, and there was actually more people into it than in the rail race.
Oh wow, yeah. So you're definitely embracing this indoor racing then. Do you have any tips for us mere mortals for this indoor racing?
I think it's super important to have a good cooling system. I used today the foams from Dyson, and it was actually quite good because keeping the temperature low, it's really important. Having a lot of drinks, cold drinks, so I had some ice buckets close to me and inside the cold water because it helps a lot to keep the temperature down. And yeah, then it's just fighting. There is not much that I can advise.
So, Rouvy as a whole then, do you think you'll use it again?
Sorry?
So, Rouvy, the app that we were racing on today, do you think you'll use it again for your training?
I don't want to be now a bad guy, but yeah, in the training I'm using the Zwift because you can use also like the slipstream and some of those things. But yeah, I think Rouvy it's a check up, and they did a really great job in the last years because I think it's not easy to be behind Zwift, and they got actually into the proper racing because today we did the Tour de Suisse. Not in Zwift, but in Rouvy. So it means that they are growing up and they did a really good job. So it could be that I will join them again.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much for your insights, Roman. I'll let you get back to life wherever you are. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Bye. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Lovely. So great to be joined there by Roman Kreuziger, professional rider for NTT. So, Jake, can you talk us through your effort at the moment?
Hard, really hard. Just kind of trying to settle into it, trying to set one sort of consistent speed, consistent power. Not really too much to add. It's not quite threshold. I don't feel like I'm going quite as hard as I was yesterday, but definitely not comfortable.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay, so we are following K Main at the moment, pushing out 5 watts per kilo, and we are 9.8 kilometers in. 18 minutes of racing completed at this point. And Jake has moved himself up into 6th position. So he's riding really strong, and he can see on his screen just ahead of him, Rini Alfin, winner of stage 1 of the Digital Swiss 5, just in front of him. So it'll be interesting to see how... Oh, Jake now takes 5th position on the road. So doing a really great ride. He's not in the highest fan setting yet, though. So I reckon he's got a bit more to give, but we will see. We will see. Okay, so it was really great to hear from Roman Kreuziger there, giving us some great indoor training tips. He suggested that it's really important to have your fan, the cooling, and the hydration being the key points that we've heard from numerous guests we've had on so far. Roman Kreuziger, of course, won the 2008 Tour of Switzerland, where he had done the Nufenen Pass and numerous others around this area. But he actually said that he found the race on Rouvy just as hard as that. So pretty impressive stuff. Jake is beside me, putting himself through that now in the fan race, where fans from all over the world have the opportunity to ride like a pro. Following the fan race earlier in the day, a really unique experience being offered here by Rouvy. If you're interested in joining us on a future fan race in the Digital Swiss 5, there is one tomorrow and the day after at 6 o'clock UK time. Head to race.rouvy.com and you can find out all the information there. So going back to the race now, 11 kilometers of racing done. We're starting to come into the foothills of the mountains now. You can see those lovely Swiss houses, very picturesque there on the hillside. The Nufenen Pass goes up to 2,500 meters of altitude gained. It's going to get hard as we hit the bottom of this climb, but we have around 8 kilometers until we do so. Currently, the battle between 5th and 6th is quite interesting between Barini Alfin and Jake Hennessy. They are currently riding only a handful of meters difference between them at present. It's going to be cat and mouse until the bottom of the mountain, I imagine. So it's going to be a tough one today for sure. The Nufenen Pass is the highest road in Switzerland. And as we can see on the right-hand side here, beautiful, beautiful scenery. Jake now puts the hammer down over 5 watts per kilo as we speak. Really, really impressive stuff. Really pushing on as we get towards the bottom of the mountain.
Get rid of the dog.
So I would suggest today that this is a stage for the climbers, the time trialists, potentially not suiting more of a sprinter or a kind of classics rider. This is something that's going to suit the rider who can put out a consistent, long effort. Jake isn't necessarily...
100% a day for climbers. This is one of those days where the weight is going to be one of the biggest factors. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to play in my favour. But I'm keeping nice and consistent at the minute. Not really overly exerting, but just trying to keep my speed up. Not lose too much time into the bottom of the climb. And see where I finish.
Great little insight there from Jake. Let's head now to a quick ad break. We'll be back with the hot racing action after this. Wait. Okay, so we are joined by Oliver Cookson from Team Ineos. He is the sports director at Team Ineos and has worked there for 8 years in total. How did you think your team did today in the racing?
Well, no, I think it was a hard race. Obviously, we won the first one with Rowan, and yeah, we kind of knew what it takes to win. Obviously, there's always going to be slight variables now between everybody's turbo trainers and things like that. But I think it's really good to see. And Kiato did a good ride today. Kiatowski, I think he's done some of his best hour power. So yeah,
wow,
just that workout.
Impressive. So, did you have any tactics going into today?
I think main tactic is obviously I think you need to warm up properly. You need to be ready. It's like a time trial. No, I think you need to come into it. The pacing, you almost need to, in a way, be aware of the others, but actually it's always about your own effort. You know. Definitely.
So, what do you think to this indoor style virtual racing like Rouvy?
I think you've got like there's the two. I think in the moment for professional cyclists, I think it's just this online racing is great. You know, it gives them something to look forward to. Even, you know, it's a fun element, but it also allows a bit of an intensity in their training they're all competitive now, and even if your coach might set a certain intensity, you'll get much more out when you're racing, whether it be online or in the real world.
Exactly. The moment the racers see someone ahead, they're going to push on.
Yeah, Rob, do you have any say in what the riders do? Oliver, my bad. Oliver, do you have much say with the coaches as to maybe prescribing races for riders? Or is it...
You mean e-racing or in general?
Do you mean e-racing or in general?
E-racing.
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 Yes, I think there's a certain group of us, there's a selection of us sports directors with the coaches, and with Tim Carrington, the kind of head of performance, that we kind of have an idea about who would be good for what races, and also who's available. We've got, you know, guys at altitude as well, which doesn't really make sense to put them into e-racing, really. I think so we definitely all put our ideas in the pot and work together. But I think with like I said, you can see the kind of riders that are really performing in the e-racing with Tour de Suisse Digital anyway.
Yes. How do you think this kind of racing is helping your riders, particularly in the time we're going through at the moment?
Well, I think mentally, I think it's good to have, you know, a bit of a change from the norm of whether that be, you know, the hours on the turbo. I think also it's bringing them all together, even, you know, as a team, whether it just be 3 riders at the moment. And I think it just gives different goals within your training. So it's really good, and it's something that we're very pleased to have as an element of the training and racing. And of course, I think to show the sponsors, to show our sport as well. And we're all very pleased to be involved, and it's been a great experience.
Lovely. And you're happy with how your guys are doing so far? Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's incredibly hard. No, I think that's the one thing to take from all this. Is it's not so, you know, these efforts. You can't repeat days of an hour intensity effort. You know, you can, but you won't perform it.
I'm just wondering, can you give us any insight on who might be riding in the next 2 stages of the Digital Swiss 5 for Ineos?
Yeah, I think tomorrow's the kind of a more rolling stage, so we'll probably look for, I think, Ben Swift, Ethan Hayter, and then we'll probably try and bring out some of our previous big guns for the final stage.
Ooh. Oh, so, you keep keeping your cards to your chest at the moment, then.
No, I think the plan is to have Rowan back. You know, I think.
Okay.
And Gatto as well, but yeah.
Yeah, he's built for this kind of thing almost.
Yeah, I think there's the mental side of the pacing as well, and it's really interesting to see who can those numbers live as well.
Yes, definitely. Well, thanks so much for your insights from behind the scenes there. That's Oliver Cookson, Sports Director at Ineos. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers. Bye now.
Bye. Okay, so back to the racing then. We are 29 minutes of racing done, and we are coming up to the bottom of the mountain now. 16.4K done. This is getting serious now. As we see, Jake is in 5th place. Let me give you a rundown of the top 10. We have G. Despres in 1st place, J. Lloyd 2nd, G. Basson 3rd, K. Main 4th, Jake in 5th, T. Hanton 6th, S. Hannenbrook in 7th, J. Rojas 8th, T. Barnett 9th, and someone Gilling 10th. Lovely. So as we can see on the screen now, just coming through what I believe is split number 3. So at this point in the pro race, they had done 26 minutes at this 18-kilometer point. So as you can see, the fan race is about 4 minutes behind the likes of Pierre Latour in the pro race, who did an amazing ride at riding at around 7 watts per kilo up until this point.
He got disqualified. You need to get involved with your commentary there. Pierre Latour had some issue with his turbo, stuff in the electronical, and was DQ'd from the race for some sort of calibration, maybe due to heat or something along those lines. But he was pulled out of the race just on the start of the climb,
Say again, Rick.
having pulled out around 2.5K on the rest of the field. But Nico Roach was still not far behind, still sitting at around 6.5 watts per kilo. Not necessarily something I could be doing now, but definitely impressive.
Okay, so back to the racing now. We are on board with Jay Lloyd in second place, riding at around 3.94 watts per kilo at the moment. We are only a matter of a handful of kilometers away from the start of the climb. We've just been through split number 3. Split number 4 comes at 22.9 kilometers. And this is where we saw the likes of Pierre Latour, as Jake said, be removed from the race due to issues with his turbo. And we saw Nicholas Roach start pushing on to make his lead early on. Zakharin and Kwiato were closing in on Roach and Warbass at this point. And there was a really good battle there as they hit the foothills of the mountain. It'll be interesting to see what sort of time the fan race is doing as they come up to this split number 4, but still 2 or 3 kilometers of racing until we get to that point. Not much movement in the top 10 at present, but I imagine as we hit the infamous Nufenen Pass, there will be a lot of moving and shaking as people realize potentially the cost of their efforts early on. So if you're watching this race and thinking, I'd like to quite like to get involved with this, potentially, head to race.rouvy.com. We've got another 2 stages of the Digital Swiss 5, which you can join in with and enjoy racing on the same roads as the pros do earlier in the day. And if you don't want to fancy racing and you'd like to just try out Rouvy itself, you can head to rouvy.com. They have 30 days completely free where you can test out a lot of different routes all over the world, in fact. So in England, they have the top 100 climbs, I believe. They have some of the famous sportives that you can go and ride parts of the route, which is really great, especially at the minute when indoor training can get quite boring without the use of indoor training tools like Rouvy. Okay, we are hitting the bottom of this climb, 20 kilometers in. And as you can see on the screen, it is starting to snake right up the mountain. It is going to be a long way from here. Although we have 34 minutes of racing done now and only 13 kilometers left, this 13 kilometers will take, I would suggest, almost as long, if not longer, than what we have done up to this point.
More than 40 minutes.
So really, it is a case of settling into this rhythm now as the turbo increases as the road goes up. And looking at Jake's screen, he's riding at over 400 watts at the minute, putting out some serious power as he chases down Kay Main, who's only 8 meters in front of him at the moment. So it's great to hear just a moment ago from Oliver Cookson, sports director of Team Ineos. They've been telling us about some of their tactics for the race and also who they've got coming up. We believe that Rohan Dennis, who was the winner of stage 1 of the pro race, will be making another appearance. and potentially the likes of Ethan Hayter, young track star for GB, who I believe Jake knows quite well, will be giving it a go tomorrow. I'm sure that Jake will be telling him after he gets off this, don't do it. It's really hard.
He messaged me last night and said that he loves TTs, so
that's true.
There we go.
That's true. He actually might be quite good. I see him as a kind of pursuiter, time trialist type guy. So perhaps this virtual Rouvy racing will suit him, but I'm sure we'll see more about that tomorrow. So we are going up this climb now, 13 kilometers long. Something really important to focus on when you're climbing is the pacing of the climb. If you go out too hard at the beginning, particularly a climb this long, you're really going to feel the pinch of it towards the end. As you can see, Jake is out of the saddle for this effort. Am I right in believing that it's easier to get the power out while you're out the saddle?
I think for something like this, when it's a really high torque climb, I find it so. But on a lesser percent, it's more efficient to be in the saddle.
Definitely. That's okay.
Stop talking to me.
That's okay. So sorry about that, Jake. There are numerous different styles when it comes to climbers. My personal favourite has to be the likes of Tommy Vauclair. He was a notorious French rider, rode for Europe Car, amongst others. And he had a notoriously ragged style, constantly with his tongue out. And I don't know, there's just many different styles. You have the likes of Roglic, who is very still and just puts the power out. And you have people like Fabio Aru, who are all over the shop, basically, when it comes to climbing. So there are lots of different ways to do it, but you have to find the best way for you. And I'd say again, it's all about the pacing when it comes to the climbs. Back to the racing then. G. Basson, we are following currently, is putting out 5.5 watts per kilo. He has a lot of work to do, though, if he wants to catch up G. Des Press, who has put in 493 meters to him at present and pulling away. This is going to be a hard press for all these riders as we come up to split number 4. Split number 4 is at 22.9 kilometers. And at this point in the pro race, we saw Nicolas Roche in the lead, Larry Warbass in second, but we saw Ilnaz Zakarin and Kwiatkowski right hot on the heels of Roche and Warbass as we got into this split. 21.6 kilometers of racing at present as we snake up through the foothills of the mountain past all these lovely trees, which kind of hide in many respects the infamous climb that we have to come. As we get further and further up, it will start to open out and the riders will start to see what lies before them and the pain they have to endure ahead. Jake is riding at over 400 watts at the moment. This is going to be a long effort at what is essentially his maximum hour power. 400 watts in context is a lot. Your average sort of club rider can possibly sustain between 250 to 300 watts for an hour, maybe 300 watts if they're a good club rider. So this is well above that for these riders in the fan race. G. Des Prez currently riding at over 6 watts per kilo there. Really impressive stuff. G. Basson in second, also doing a sterling ride at 5 watts per kilo. As you can see on the screen, we are coming up to split number 4, and we're on board with Jacob Hennessy at the moment on screen, but also here with me in the studio, giving his best effort up this 13-kilometer climb. He's chosen to opt for out of the saddle style for his indoor effort here, purely because often with this kind of effort, the turbo adds the resistance as if you are on the climb, which creates a lot more torque. So for this high torque, Jake likes to ride out the saddle as he's able to put out a little bit more power that way and give some of his leg muscles a bit of respite by chopping and changing between seated and out of the saddle. This climb has quite a few switchbacks, just like one of my favorite climbs, the good old Stelvio, which I believe has 20 something, or probably more than 20 switchbacks in it. We're coming up to one of those switchbacks now. And Jake is just taking the first switchback at the moment. So a rundown of the top 5. G. Desprez putting out 4.9 watts per kilo. G. Busson at over 5 watts per kilo now in second. J. Lloyd in third place, riding at 6.5 watts per kilo. He's putting a surge in. K. Main in fourth place at 5.7 watts per kilo. And Jake is around 5 watts per kilo as well. But only about 15 or 16 kilometers an hour at the minute. This just gives you the insight as to that gradient, 14% gradient at the moment. This is really, really struggling the legs. 300 meters now until we hit split number 4 at 22.9 kilometers in. It'll be interesting to see. Guy Desprez has gone through there in 39 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm just looking to my notes now to see if I've got the time of the pros. I can't see it, but this is really impressive riding now by Guy Desprez, putting over 1 minute and 50 into second place at that split. But is it too soon? Can he hold on? Remember, there's still a long, long way to go. Around 11 kilometers until we reach the summit. Jake's about to go through a split 4. He's just entering into the banner at the moment as we're on board with him now. Just about to go through that banner, riding at 4.5 watts per kilo. This is going to be really hurting the legs now. This is the third day of maximal effort for Jake. And this will really be a question of how his legs have recovered over the previous 2 days of this Digital Swiss 5. So if you just joined us, you're following the Digital Swiss 5 Race 3 from Fiesch to Nufenen Pass. The unique thing about the Digital Swiss 5 with Rouvy is that you get to join in the fan race after the pro race earlier in the day. If you want to find out more info on that, you can head to race.rouvy.com for more info and to join in with another stage. We've got 2 more days of racing left, so do get involved, and rouvy.com is the place you need to go to find out more about that. Having a look at Jake's screen now then, he is riding at over 5 watts per kilo, almost 6, as he hits 10% on this climb. Really pressing on now as we hit 10 kilometers of racing left to go. It was at this point that Roglic we saw on screen earlier in the pro race took a gel, would you believe? And subsequently, he took this gel, was in the top 10 for a short while, but eventually didn't manage to finish in the top 10 of the pro race. So perhaps taking a gel isn't the best thing to be doing. I don't know.
Think about what you're saying.
G. Desprez putting at 5.6 watts per kilo, and he's around about 600 meters ahead of second place at present, really forging a path ahead now. But the question is, as always with these things, has he gone a little bit too soon, or has he paced his effort to perfection? So the Nufenen Pass, if you're interested, is the highest road in Switzerland. It's featured many times in the Tour of Switzerland. And Roman Kreuziger, who was our guest earlier, told us that when he won this race in 2008, it took on the likes of the Nufenen Pass and others around this area. So he found out earlier in the pro race that it was just as hard as in real life, if not harder. And those partaking in the fan race today will be feeling every percentage gain of that climb. So we are 24 kilometers of racing done. We heard earlier on the stream Alex Dowsett talking and hypothesizing about which bike would actually be the best for indoor training. Obviously, the pro riders have their aerodynamic bikes, their weight optimized bikes. And the three things that kind of change the way a bike rides is the stiffness, the aerodynamics, and the weight. So his theory was that potentially for indoor training, the only thing that really matters with a bike is the stiffness, as aerodynamics and weight don't really come into it at all. His theory was that, or at least the person he was talking to, his theory was that a steel bike might actually be the best bike for indoor training. You'll have to let us know if you're following on the stream if you think that's accurate. Jake is currently building up a steel bike, but it's not going to be ready, I don't think, for the Digital Swiss 5. But potentially he might have an advantage in future Rouvy and indoor races if he switches to the steel bike. Do let us know on Facebook if you have any questions. We would love to hear from you, and I will endeavour to answer all those questions for you. Back to the racing then. G. Desprez still leading the way, riding at over 5 watts per kilo. He's put over 500 meters into second place on the road. G. Basson from Pro Touch Continental. G. Desprez from France might potentially be used to these mountainous roads, and he is definitely showing everyone how it's done at the moment, gaining all the time on his competitors. G. Basson in second, still riding a solid ride, putting out over 5 watts per kilo. G. Basson from the Pro Touch Continental team, a South African rider. There's quite a few South African riders featuring in the top of these races. They are keen indoor cyclists at the moment and showing us how it's done. As we can see on the screen, we're starting to come out into a more open area where we can see the top of the mountain. When we reach the top, it will be full of snow and quite a spectacle. So on board with G. Basson, he's dropped off his power slightly at the minute, only managing 3 watts per kilo there, but he's now picked it up again as he hits 15% gradient on this climb at the moment. This is really a tough push for anyone. 15% is very, very steep, particularly for a climb that is this long. So I'm just going to see if we've got the winner of the Rouvy competition. So for the next couple of days, you have the opportunity to win Rouvy socks, Rouvy bead on, and Rouvy jersey. If you guess the time of the pro race winner. So I will hopefully be finding that out very soon, and I will be announcing the winner on this stream. So do stay tuned for that. We will be bringing you that very shortly. Looking at Jake's screen now, he is riding 13%, and we can see it pitches up here. We know that it's going to hit 15% at the edge of this corner. The views are beautiful, very picturesque, but the riders won't be thinking about that. They will be fully committed to their effort up this grueling climb. We've got more than 1,100 meters of climbing to do. 2,500 meters of altitude over this 33-kilometer stretch. 2,500 meters of altitude gain.
No, we've got 1,500 meters altitude gain.
You told me earlier it was
2,500 summit.
Oh.
Doesn't start at sea level.
Ah, okay.
Let's take 5.
My notes are not as clear as Jake's information, but I think we should leave the commentating to me for now, as Jake is putting out over 400 watts as he hits this corner. This is a all-out effort now for the last 7 or 8 kilometers of this climb left to go. Still in the front then, G. Desprez forging ahead. He has put over 500 meters into his second place rival, G. Basson. It seems like there's not much movement in the top 10 at the moment, but as we come into the last remaining kilometers of this climb, that may change. So the Digital Swiss 5, we have a pro race every single day, which is covered on numerous TV channels and streamed across the internet on Bellon and numerous other streams. So you can watch that every day at 4:10. The winner of the pro race earlier today was Nicholas Roach, who rode away solo to take victory. Second place was Ilna Zakharin, and third place, Larry Warbas. Nicholas Roach finished in 1 hour and 12 minutes, putting in 1 minute and 10 into Zakharin and 1 minute and 20 into Warbas. Really impressive stuff from the pros earlier. And we are now covering, at the moment, the Digital Swiss 5 fan race. Every day you have the opportunity to partake in the fan race and ride the same route as the pros and get to experience what it's like to ride like a pro. .95 watts per kilo for Jacob at the moment. He is really digging into this effort now. 26 kilometers of racing done up to this point. We have a few people who have taken part in races on previous days. I believe that M. Smith, T. Hanlon, who are all in the top 10, have also taken part in the previous 2 stages of the Digital Swiss 5. Okay, so I will be hearing very soon on the winner of the competition, which of course won a Rouvy bead on, Rouvy socks, and Rouvy jersey. If you come and watch the pro race tomorrow or the day after, they will be running the same competition. So if you can guess the time of the pro race, you will also win a Rouvy care package. Just got the winner through now. The winner was Edouard Joseph, who guessed 1 hour, 12 minutes and 50 seconds. The time of the winner, of course, was Nicholas Roach in 1 hour, 12 minutes and 11 seconds. So very good guessing there. Come back tomorrow to find out who has won the prize. Tomorrow we're going to be having this competition for the next 2 stages. So you'll have to watch the pro race at 4:10, of course. But if you guessed the correct finishing time, you'll be going home with a very nice Rouvy bead-on, Rouvy jersey, and Rouvy goodies, just in general. Lovely. Okay. The Nufenen Pass is looking very twisty up at this point as G. Desprez heads towards the next split. I'm going to need a reminder as to what split that is at the moment, but I believe it'll be split 7. 5. Just waiting to hear on the radio what time the pros did through that split. So split 5 comes at 28.2 kilometers in, and the leader, Nicholas Roche, took this split in 54 minutes and 17 seconds. A blisteringly fast time from Nicholas Roche. Once he hit split 5, he only had another 18 minutes or so of racing. So I imagine once the riders hit this, there'll be 20 or 30 minutes of racing left for the leader. 2 kilometers to go then until that split number 5. It's at this point in the pro race that we saw Ilna Zakharin snatch second place off Larry Warbass, who held on for a brilliant effort to come in third. Roman Kreuziger, who we had on the stream earlier in the day, who's of course a Czech rider, he was 45th at this point and pressing on. I'm not sure where he came in the end. I'll try and find out. But he said earlier today that it was as hard, if not harder, than when he rode the pass, the Nufenen Pass in real life in the Tour de Switzerland, which he of course won in 2008. Back to the racing then. G. Desprez riding at 5.6 watts per kilo. All these riders in the top 5 are riding at consistently 5 watts per kilo or above. Truly impressive stuff as we hit 11% at the moment on this mountain. We've just hit 27 kilometers of racing done. For Jacob.
28.5 for the leader. He's coming up to checkpoint 6.
Let's go and have a look at some of the other riders in the top 10. Let's have a look at M. Smith, who is currently in 9th position. See how he's getting on. The battle here between M. Smith and S. Hannenbuch is a tight one. There's only a handful of meters between them at the moment, 5 meters, and they're both riding at a very similar power output at the moment. It'll be interesting to see who manages to get the better of the other as we reach the penultimate kilometers on this climb. Perhaps one of them is pacing their effort to perfection or holding on to the other and trying to dare them to ride faster. That's the great thing about Rouvy, is that you're able to see your competitors around you in real time on the road. Your avatar is added onto real footage of the real roads out there in Switzerland. And these two are able to have their virtual race, and they are neck and neck at the moment. Not much can be chosen between them as they make their way up to split number 6. Let's have a look at 8th position now. No first name given. Mr. Jilling, we'll call him. Riding at 4 watts per kilo, 3.8 watts per kilo in the dark green jersey. 27 kilometers completed for him at the moment. He is holding strong and not far away from T. Barrett in 7th position. All of them in different jerseys, the avatars here. You have the opportunity to customize your avatar in the Rouvy app, which is pretty cool. Jake has gone for a white jersey, I believe, and everyone gets to choose their own individual colors to take on this race today. So Jake is 400 or so meters away from split number 5. Guy Desprez has gone through there in 57 minutes, blisteringly fast, followed by Gustav Basson, 2 minutes down, Kent Main, 3 minutes down, and Jake Hennessy just taking that split very soon, around 4-5 minutes down. 2 riders then in the top 3 from Pro Touch Continental. Their team director will be very happy this evening to see his 2 South African boys right up there and riding strong. But the man of the hour, it seems, is Guy Desprez from France. Over 600-700 meters ahead of the rest, putting in 2 minutes into 2nd place currently. So 200 meters for Jake now until he has hit split number 5, and 5 kilometers left on this climb. 4th place has just gone through the split there. Jean-Pierre Lloyd from Office Guru Racing, another South African rider, riding incredibly strong, 4 minutes 30 down on the leader. The Nufenen Pass is getting steep now, 13%, as the riders make their way up the side of this iconic Swiss mountain, which has featured many times in the Tour of Switzerland and will feature again in the 2021 Tour of Switzerland. It would, of course, featured in this year's edition, although due to the circumstances, will be postponed until next year. But it's great that we get an insight on Rouvy as to some of the iconic places and climbs that will feature in the 2021 edition of the Tour of Switzerland. The Nufenen Pass attracts the most spectators, and it is the highest road pass in Switzerland. Guy Desprez takes on another hairpin at the moment and riding still at 5.5 to 6 watts per kilo currently as he comes up to split number 6. We can see that the road is 12% as he comes up to the next split at 30 kilometers of racing done. Let's see the time then for Guy Desprez as he comes through this split. Okay, I apologize. I don't think that was a split. I think that is the 5K to go banner. Oh no, it was a split. He's done split 7 in 1 hour and 3 minutes, only 2 minutes slower than Nicholas Roche in the pro race.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so we've got a few questions from Facebook and Instagram. Let's have a look.
Pace it back a bit. I'm blowing.
So someone's asked, how do you improve your watts per kilogram? Something that's quite important in these races. So obviously there's 2 ways you can do that, watts and kilograms. So you can either improve your power or you can reduce your weight. Usually the best way to go is that you increase your power through consistent training and essentially hard work, bit of elbow grease, and putting in the time on the bike. There's also the fact that you can lose a little bit of weight, but often, especially for riders who are racing at the top level, this isn't always the best way to go. Let's see if we've got any more questions. Jake is in his third day of racing. Yes, that's right. So Jake has been doing every stage of the Digital Swiss 5, and he told me he plans to do all 5 stages. So incredibly impressive that he is holding on to the top 10 at the moment. T. Hanlon has just overtaken him into 5th position, but there's only 10-15 meters of distance between them at the moment. Both riding at over 5 watts per kilo as they come up to split 6 in about 200 meters. Really impressive ride now, 1 hour and 6 minutes of racing up to this point. Very, very hard racing, as I'm sure you'll agree. You can see Jake trying away beside me. This is not an easy race, and although you see the virtual avatars on screen, being able to see Jake partaking in the race, you can imagine what all of these riders are enduring throughout the world. We saw earlier in the pro race that they had riders from 22 different countries joining in to the virtual race on the Digital Swiss 5 Pro race. And I'm sure we have many, many more nationalities joining in for this fan race. We have over 300 riders on the start line today. So let's go to split 6. Jake Hennessy has just gone through there, 6 minutes down on the leader, but still going strong and not far behind Thomas Hanlon of Team Chronomaster. We've got 3 South Africans in the top 4. They are doing a sterling ride at the minute. Best placed Swiss rider at this point is 12th position, Dominic Weiss, doing it for his home country. He rides for Bauer Sport Cycling Team. 4.3 watts per kilo for Dominic Weiss at the minute. And as we can see, the top 12 riders are all putting out some serious power here. All of them riding at well over 4 watts per kilo. And in some cases, a lot more than 4 watts per kilo. It'd be interesting to see what kind of setups all these people are running indoors. It's really important to note that if you've got a fan, that can actually make a huge difference in your power output. We saw Jake on stage 1 of the Digital Swiss 5 finish in 13th place without a fan. And this is something that I think was really impressive, because after speaking to numerous sports directors on the stream, they reckoned that the difference with having a fan and not could be as much as 30 to 40 watts. So that's something you really don't want to sacrifice when you're heading into a virtual race. Other things to consider with this virtual racing is the warm-up. It's really important to get a thorough warm-up, because from the gun, you are going into what is going to be a maximal hour effort. These riders are riding at their threshold or potentially sometimes above at points. This race today is over an hour, so you would think that riders are riding just below their threshold. But I can tell you, once they hit this climb, it is everything they've got until the top. We are following Jake Hennessy at the moment, and he has about 4 kilometers until he reaches the summit of the Nufenen Pass, riding at over 4 watts per kilo. As we see Guy Desprez and Gustav Basson head through split number 8. Guy Desprez takes that in 1 hour and 7 minutes through split number 8, which is incredibly fast. Nicholas Roach in the pro race completed the same split in 1 hour and 5 minutes. So these guys are only 2 or 3 minutes, 2, 3, 4 minutes behind the time of Nicholas Roach. Very impressive stuff. So we are here at the final few kilometers of the Nufenen Pass, and we can see that it snakes up the side of this mountain. Let's go to G. Desprez on the road to see how long he has left. G. Desprez, 2 kilometers left of racing. He will be not far away from split 9 and not long until that Flamme Rouge, that last kilometer, which I'm sure he will be giving everything to see at this point. He'll know that once he hits that kilometer to go sign, it will be an all-out effort to hold on to this victory, and I'm sure he will be quite glad to reach the finish line at the completion of his effort. 6 watts per kilo I saw there for G. Desprez, doing a very strong ride in his purple jersey out front, socking it to them as we make our way up the Nufenen Pass. A lot of you asking what the real difference is between indoor racing and in real life. We heard earlier from Roman Kreuziger that he thought after completing the same pass in the Tour of Switzerland and on Rouvy, that actually he thought it was as hard, if not harder, on Rouvy itself. Potentially one of the things that makes it more difficult is that it is so intense. In a lot of road races that these professional riders are used to, they're taking on multiple hours and many days of racing. So therefore, just by the nature of the endurance, they're not going to be going as hard for a flat out hour and a half, which is what I think makes this indoor racing so difficult, particularly for those riders who are used to the long endurance road races. So a lot of the pros are using this virtual app actually to help and supplement their training with the lack of racing. It's giving them a lot of new motivation and ability to stay committed and stay focused and keep that fitness up. It is difficult for many people all around the world. There are varying levels of quarantine depending on where you are from. But some riders are unable to get outside or unable to get outside for as long as they would like. So apps like Rouvy have a great place in the world as we know it at the moment as a training tool and something to motivate yourself for to keep your fitness up. I think it's great to integrate an element of indoor training in any training plan, even when, you know, before all this kind of craziness kicked off, I actually quite liked doing a structured turbo session. And particularly in the winter, this is great for motivation because it can help you to get that bit more out of yourself. When you see someone's avatar just in front of you, you can just claw back to them and give more than you would if you were just on your own looking at a wall on your trainer. Guy Desprez then has just gone through split number 9 in a time of 1 hour and 13 minutes. Split 9. He is only 4 minutes down on the pro race winner, Nicholas Roach. Potentially, Guy Desprez would have been better placed in that pro race. Okay. Let's have a look then at Jacob Hennessy, who is riding at well over 4 watts per kilo now. He's about to go through split 8 in less than 100 meters. Very impressive stuff. And I could just see in 10th position, B. Groen, who raced yesterday, has made his way up into the top 10. In fact, I stand corrected. He's moved his way up into 11th position. So we're looking at split 7 now, as Jake has just gone through there in a time of 1 hour and 15 minutes. Very impressive. Only 10 minutes down on the likes of Nicholas Roach. So we saw earlier today the pro riders take on the same iconic mountain, the Nufenen Pass. The winner of the pro race earlier was Nicholas Roach, followed by Ilnaz Zakarin and Larry Warbass. And Chris Hamilton just missing out on the podium earlier today, coming in 4th position. We saw the riders, the pro riders, take on these same roads, and going to the finish now, G. Desprez crosses the finish line, takes that chicken dinner in a really impressive time of 1 hour and 16 minutes. Wow, very, very quick. And we see Kent Main from Pro Touch Continental pressing on. His teammate Gustav is only a handful of meters behind him. It's going to be a really close race now for second between the teammates K Main and G Basson from Pro Touch Continental. The two South African riders will be fighting it out now to see who gets bragging rights. 30 meters between them as they come into the final 500 meters. It's tooth and nail to the line then, thrashing on those pedals to see if they can hold on. It seems like K-Main has got the better of G Basson at this point, but can he pull back, or is it a case that G Basson has blown? On board with K-Main then, as he forges away, he's putting in 20 meters now, 120 meters, 130 meters into his teammates, and it seems that he will be the better of the two today on the Nufenen Pass. It'd be interesting to know who is better in real life too, as they are teammates. I'm sure they'll be able to let us know later on. And G Basson, 50 meters to go then, as he rides at over 6 watts per kilo to cross the finish line. Very strong ride from him, as we wait to see Thomas Hanlon from the UK, Team Chronomaster, come in 4th place. We're on board with him now in the dark green jersey, doing a very strong ride, over 5 watts per kilo, as he comes up to the summit of the beautiful Nufenen Pass. He will come to the snow-peaked mountains. He will get to enjoy those views. But he can't rest on his laurels, as Gilling is 60 meters behind him and has the potential to draw that back. He's closing in on 4th position. It's going to be a tight one to the line to see if T. Hanlon can hang on for 4th position. There's also another close race down in 6th, 7th place between S. Hannonbrook and M. Smith. We will see who gets the better towards the top there. And we are at 1 hour and 18 minutes racing left for the rest of the riders. The top 3 have finished. Guy Desprez from France, Kent Main from Pro Touch Continental, Gustav Basson from Pro Touch Continental. 2 South Africans in the top 3. They'll be very happy with that. And a very unique experience for those South African riders to experience riding the real roads of Switzerland that will feature in the 2021 Tour of Switzerland from the comfort of their own home. On board with Jacob Hennessy, who is here in the studio with me and also on your screen, riding at over 4 watts per kilo as he comes up to the final kilometre of this climb. It's going to be all or nothing then for Jake as he comes into the final kilometre. He'll be hoping to get under the hour and a half as we reach the final kilometres of this climb. He's in 7th place, but riding strong. He's got to push on now to make sure T. Barrett does not catch up to him, only 80 metres back. It's going to be a hard one to hold on. He's out the saddle, giving it everything as we come up to the final kilometre and split number 9. We can see on the screen the snow-peaked mountains. Once you see them, you know that there is not long left. Only 1 kilometre of pain left for Jacob. We're coming up to split 9 in 300 metres. The Nufenen Pass then is the iconic climb that we are making our way up at the moment. It is actually the highest road in the whole of Switzerland. It's at 2,500 meters altitude. Very, very tough climb that's featured many times in the Tour of Switzerland and will feature again in the 2021 Tour of Switzerland. Jean-Pierre Lloyd then goes through split number 9 in 6th position, 7 minutes down on the leader, and going strong towards the final kilometre now for these riders. It's going to be an all or nothing effort as Jacob hits split number 9 in 20 metres or so.
Oh, yours back in.
So today's stage is a hilly one. It finishes up the highest road in Switzerland. A very stark difference to the stage we saw yesterday from around a flat circuit. Yesterday, completely different, suiting a different kind of rider. Jake took the win yesterday in the fan race. But today is definitely one for the climbers. And Jacob is going strong in 7th position at the moment. Doing a cracking ride, bearing in mind this is the 3rd day of effort for him. So it's not often that we get to experience a climb this long. We're both from the UK, and where we live, there aren't many climbs even longer than 5-10 minutes. So this is something very different for Jacob. He's used to obviously riding the alpine climbs abroad, but at the moment, the only option are those shorter British climbs. It's great that from our dining room, we can experience these real roads in Switzerland from the comfort of our own home. So still hanging on to 4-5 watts per kilo. Jacob is 32.9 kilometers into the race. He's well into the last kilometer, and he will be giving it all he can now as he comes towards the finish line. It'll be interesting to get Jake's thoughts on how hard this stage has been compared to the previous 2 stages. It's never easy to ride this hard for this long, but each stage has its own unique difficulties and stresses and suits completely different riders. Jake's putting a surge now then to hold on to 7th position. It's going to be a really close battle coming into the last 500 meters now until the finish. Jake is flat out of the saddle, trying to hold on. He doesn't want T. Barrett to take 7th position away from him. It's all or nothing now. Hammering down those pedals, Jacob is pulling away. T. Barrett has not much to reply with, only holding on to 4-5 watts per kilo as Jake tops out at 7. He's into the last 150 meters As a sprinter, he's used to this last 200-meter dig. He puts his head down and presses all the way to the line. It's going to be 7th position for Jacob. A very impressive ride. I'll give him some time to get his breath back.
No, I'm all good.
You all good?
I'm all good.
How did that compare to the previous 2 stages of the Digital Swiss 5?
It wasn't as hard as the first one. I think it wasn't as hard as stage 1. But again, just that real high torque. I was in 39.28 the whole way up the climb. Wasn't really anything I could do more, but yeah, really, really hard. I'd say it's similar to riding a climb in real life, except I feel like the gradient catches you out a little bit more because you're less able to maybe sprint through. You're less able to really sprint through that steep gradient, whereas normally in a hairpin you would maybe accelerate into it to make sure you carry the speed out. But
so we've got 2 more days of the fan race, which if you want to get involved with, head to race.rouvy, you can join in. But you've got 2 more days of this. Any thoughts?
just regret. Just regret. No, I'm joking. It's I'm looking forward to the last 2 days. Like today was the hardest day. This was like sort of the Queen stage of the whole race, and yeah, I'm happy to get it finished. Happy to get it done in that time. Yeah, that is what I could do.
Very impressive riding. Thank you very much for joining us. I've been your host, Kieran McVitie, joined by pro cyclist Jacob Hennessy. This has been the Digital Swiss 5 Race 3 up the Nufenen Pass. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Why are we all in? We were born this way and keep going. We stick together, discover and dare together. We share good times, sore times, and party times. We're the wild boys, the legends, the mothers of awesome, and we belong together.
Join us at welovecycling.com. Skoda, simply clever.